You go down and then you go up to make it better, down underground, it's just one way up, make it better, if you stand by me, I will stand by you, to make it better.
Hello and welcome to Rise Up with Rebecca Seawright on the Manhattan Neighborhood Network. I'm Assemblymember Rebecca Seawright, proud to represent parts of the Upper East Side, Yorkville, and Roosevelt Island. New York is home to some of the most innovative and imaginative artists in theater, opera, and more. Today, we have a very special show as artists redefine their art forms and resonate with our times. Today's guest has created a documentary about one of a modern American opera's most influential directors, Rhoda Levine. And I am proud to introduce the film director, David D. Williams. He's the former executive director of the Carl Schurz Park Conservancy. He's a graduate of Northwestern University and the Tisch School of Arts at NYU after studying French cinema in Paris. He's a seasoned media executive in New York, and we are so pleased to have him on the show today. A frequent industry speaker, he taught at the New York University Center for Publishing and has served on various New York Association and nonprofit boards of directors. As president of Dillon Marketing New York, a full-service marketing and communications agency, he created branding campaigns for a diverse client base. Most recently, he has served as director of our wonderful gym here on the Upper East Side, as I mentioned, the Carl Schurz Park Conservancy. Please go visit and support your parks. It is your front yard here in the Upper East Side. David then returned to his first love of filmmaking. He has since devoted himself to telling Rhoda Levine's story, her artistry, her career, her life, and the legacy in an uncommon woman. And this is his first documentary. So David, tell us all about Rhoda and this wonderful documentary.
Well, Rhoda is now 93 years old, not quite kicking, but still with us. And I met her and started working on this film about 10, 11 years or so ago. And she was not actually pulled into this project kicking and screaming, but she was in her own self-effacing, characteristic way. She would say, "Why are you making a film about me?" And we actually include footage about that in the film. She was she was just so as I said, self-effacing, but yet when the camera started rolling, Rhoda just turned, she just clicked on her professional me and also her mind and her memory. We got her at a great time. She was we filmed her in her apartment and elsewhere, but she's just an incredible force that so many people fell under her spell, either as students or in operas or in dance choreography that she did. She was an easy subject to whose onion was easy to peel aside, and we have an incredible array of major artists and thinkers who, without skipping a beat, said, "Yes, I'd like to be in your film and talk about this incredible woman." So
Wonderful. And it took you 11 years to get a rough cut for the film?
Yep.
How did that work out during the pandemic?
Well, during the pandemic, like so much, we just sort of shut down, and because we were not in post-production, there was not a lot that we could do to help finish the film, but we kept the fires burning, and I've been very, very lucky to have an incredible crew along the way, all of which helped me on my vertical learning curve in doing this project. I was so impressed with a documentary that Ethan Hawke had directed which I recommend everybody watch, Seymour in Introduction, about a classical pianist and teacher named Seymour Bernstein, who also was unknown to 99% of the people that would come to watch that film. Same with Rhoda. Most people don't know who Rhoda Levine is. But I was so impressed with the tone and the touch of that film that I went after Ethan Hawke's film crew. And they, when they knew what this was going to be about and they knew a little bit about Rhoda, they gave me great prices and we started with that. But during the pandemic, I can't quite remember, but I've worked with about 5 editors along the way. 2 personally have all been great, and I've been working in post-production most recently with just a terrific director, editor, who is spooky smart, and I'm just so thrilled that she got me to this point with a rough cut. So
Fabulous. That's terrific. And what especially do you find about Rhoda's life that most New Yorkers that have never heard of her are going to really resonate with and appreciate with when they see the documentary?
well, Rhoda's the fact of where she lives is something that will speak to New Yorkers. She lives in Washington Mews, which is now NYU property, but upstairs lives Alger Hiss's son. There are 2 artists that live below her, and she taught in several of the schools in New York, Manhattan School of Music, and anybody who's a New Yorker should know that this woman was behind the scenes in so many pivotal ways in the cultural life of our city. She was a major director at New York City Opera. She also studied with Martha Graham, and that was a very important connection for her. But when I first started working on this film, I didn't really think that this was so much a New York story. But working with my consulting producer out in San Francisco, and a earlier consulting producer here in New York, they said, this is a New York story. And we have yellow cabs. We have pictures of Lincoln Center, so you can't avoid New York in this story, and in this film or in this story. She's she's very much a part of the warp and woof of Manhattan. So
That's terrific. That's terrific. And who is your targeted audience for this
Me.
particular?
People like me, people that love the arts. People, first of all, it's obvious she was an opera director, so that's our first core audience. Anybody, it's a small audience, but it's a very, very informed and very dedicated and audience. And so many people who in that sphere, either as audience members or as performers, know who Rhoda Levine is. So you start with them, but then anybody who really is interested in the arts, and also anybody that maybe of my generation who knows when they hear of the people that Rhoda worked with and knew. And this was the first thing that pulled me into the film. It wasn't quite so much Rhoda herself, that of course changed, but it was the people that she worked with. And they were like a liberal arts syllabus. There was Philip Glass, the great opera and movie director Lucchino Visconti, Ezra Pound, and she tosses off all these wonderful stories.
There's Cy Coleman. He wrote a lot of Broadway musicals. Anthony Dean Griffey, one of the most extraordinary and most gifted singers and actors. This is the baby of my super. This is a picture of me, our conductor Ronald Zolman, Maurice Sendak. This is Lucchino Visconti, who thought that I should be an opera director, and I said never. And then, of course, I became an opera director.
The important part of this woman's work was influenced by politics and progressivism. And she speaks very, very succinctly and very pointedly about why. So,
What social or political issues of the day did Rhoda's work touch on, especially given today's political climate?
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, Rhoda. The most important. We focus on 4 of her operas, and they all address some of these leitmotifs. The most important opera she directed, by her own claim, is Der Kaiser von Atlantis, which was found stuffed in the wall of the Theresienstadt concentration camp. And it fell into a woman's hands who ran up to Rhoda at a performance and said, "I would like to have you direct the world premiere of this opera," which she did in Amsterdam. And we have some bits from that in the film. So that got her off, got her running. But she also directed the world premiere 40 years ago at New York City Opera of X, the Life and Times of Malcolm X. And it was written at that time by a young guy who I interviewed in the film. It's an interview I really prepared for because it was the last we did. And it's one of the last operas that we focus on in the film. See, she also directed a seminal opera, which is the most performed opera in the world premiere of Little Women. And the fourth opera was of Mice and Men, which is where his progressivism's on. It's drooling out of his mouth. So those are the four operas we focus, and they all demonstrate fervent political commitment. So.
And you mentioned that Rhoda provided oxygen to works that would have otherwise really struggled. Does New York have the oxygen with the operas today that are struggling to succeed in today's world? I've provided grants to the Metropolitan Opera, but it seems that especially post-COVID, so much, and with the cuts in Washington, so much of the arts is really struggling.
Absolutely, yeah. And you're absolutely right. I brought into the film a woman who is a director at the Met, Sarah Ina Myers, and I sat her down with Rhoda to talk about opera today. This was filmed before COVID. It was also filmed before the current federal cuts, but she speaks to how people in opera, like a lot of arts, are hustling. And she was at the time directing an opera that was performed in Greenwood Cemetery. It was half of it was Frankenstein and half of it was Telltale Heart. And then if anybody is going to save opera today, it's going to be Anthony Roth Costanzo, who studied with Rhoda, and we filmed him at his studio, which the Times later did an article on what he was selling it for, the studio. But we filmed him there, and he's so eloquent about Rhoda's impact, and also how people are having to rethink their art form today. And he's a perfect example over at Little Island. He's performing again this, and he's also the director now of Opera Philadelphia, and a great job at pulling people in and with some interesting works. So,
and what is it about Rhoda that she was able to affect so many generations of artists even today?
She was sort of like a velvet hammer. She was she got where she got. She had a philosophy which we don't dwell on it, but it's very clear that her philosophy of teaching and her philosophy of directing performers was that you as a performer have within you all the emotions that you need to bring there in a performance. So she's also just very, very endearing, which at the age of in her 80s, which is when we were filming her, is very, very, very clear. I mean, people who were studied with her, people that were directed by her, adore her. So.
Very charismatic. It reminds me a little of the 97-year-old Marilyn May, who I heard perform this summer and presented a proclamation to, and she's still teaching her students and just doing fabulous. So how do you think Rhoda would depict or comment on the issues that are facing America in 2025?
I can't use profanity, right? Because she would, we have her actually before any of this. We have a good stretch of footage where she's talking about. I asked her that because she lived in Europe for many years, and she would come back and forth to the States, back and forth to New York, and she talks about how great it was to live in a socialist country. And she said people here don't have a clue, and they have a better sense of well-being in that. She's not been of sound enough mind most recently to I haven't talked with her about what's happened most recently, but were she just spent a lot of time on it, she probably would be distracted from her back pain because it's what we see. So.
And what do you think we as New Yorkers can do to support aspiring young artists, and what message can we give to them following Rhoda's inspiring career?
I think you just have to listen to your voice, and she speaks about that in the film, and she speaks about her parents who are very nurturing and very, and she says, listen. What her parents did was listen to what young people say. So I think young people just have to, who are going into the arts, have to just have through it all the courage of their convictions, and surround themselves with multipliers and mentors. Find any mentor you can, because they're going to help you sleep better at night and wake up in the morning and have the energy to put one foot in front of the other. That stealing money,
How much does it cost to produce a documentary like this?
Well, we've gotten to this point for about $200,000. And go ahead.
And how much, what are the funding streams? Have you gotten some grants from the arts or to produce this film? Or where do you get your fundraising? Where do you target?
We've not applied. I was advised early on to not quite spin my wheels for grants. There were one or two that didn't pan out, but all of the money has come from Rhoda's circle, from people that know her, people who've gotten to know her, me, and we got to we're at Rough Cut, which is just it's spectacular. It's a 57-minute piece of work, and what we have facing us are two stages: one to raise the funding to get us to as an acceptable print to submit to film festivals, and then the fine-tuning that will happen later when we ready it for streaming or for educational use. So
I think educational use in our colleges and schools and arts department is a wonderful idea. There's so much to learn. I chair the aging committee now in the assembly, and there's so much for our young people, or really all ages, to learn from our seniors that have pay 70% of their income in taxes and provide $70 billion. I mean, they're just a huge, huge resource. They have this life experience. They love to work with young people. We have a program in our office where we have high school students that need community service credit. We team them up with a senior, and they help them with their computer skills, their cell phone skills, teach them social media. And it's a wonderful, wonderful program. But I love to hear you say, David, that you're going to eventually take this film to the schools and show it to students, because I think it can be so valuable. How long is the film?
it's 57 minutes without
57.
credit. Short documentary. So. And interestingly enough, I was so lucky to have an intern working with me. Well, actually, she wasn't working with me. She was working with my editor, Christy Herring, at Christy. And she did a great job and a good doing some great deep dive, archival deep dives. We the current the rough cut that we've got is chock full of great archival video, and also just some great, because Rhoda was covered in print very thoroughly. There were two tragic things that happened that affect her legacy. Number one was, do I have time for the two?
Yes.
One,
Yes.
okay. One of them was we did a lot of archival research over at Lincoln Center, at the library there, and which Rhoda donated all of her files to Lincoln Center, to the library there. It's all cataloged. All of the work that she did, all of her archives on Der Kaiser von Atlantis are at the Holocaust Museum in Washington, and I sent one of my researchers down there to go through all of that. But one of the challenges, a couple of challenges for making this film. One is obviously raising the funds for it, and that continues to be a challenge. The other was a limited amount of money you can spend on covering artistic performance, and quite honorably, people, if they've sung and it's on film or on tape, they expect to be compensated for that. So we were always going to be an issue, and we've gotten around that in some very clever, very good ways. But two things happened to a lot of Rhoda's work. The files from New York City Opera ended up, after the opera was New York City shut down, they were stored in a basement down in the Wall Street area before Sandy. And then when Sandy happened, all of these files and films of the operas were ruined. What remained went up to Columbia, and we've worked with them on what is there. And then, as you may remember, the scenery for some of the great performances at New York City Opera were destroyed in a fire in the warehouse in New Jersey. I forget where it was, but so we've always thought that this is a story of a woman whose life was in the background. She was directing. She wasn't a performer. Not back in those days, they didn't film you on you left and right. So there are little bits and pieces that you can get of somebody back then. So this film is Rhoda's legacy, and we touch on it, a very important thing about Rhoda and her story, and she speaks about regretting never having had children. And that, in fact, that was the first thing she said to me when I went to her apartment to go for lunch and talk about the film. And we have that in the film. So her sense of regret about that, but she has seen the rough cut, and the edge of her bed, and the first words she said were "thank you."
Oh, that's so nice, so rewarding, and
Yep.
such a good feeling that she's so appreciative of her life story being shared. So I've been talking to a 97-year-old woman, and she's a member of the Cause Club, and which only admits women, and she is in a memoir writing class where she does one chapter at a time, and has had such a wonderful life and so many lessons learned. So it can be a course adoption as part of a curriculum agenda in college in the arts. So I think studying about people such as Rhoda has such a meaningful purpose to it. So I thank you, David, for all that you've done. And so what is the next step in the production process?
The next step, funding provided, is to my consulting producer. His name is Mark Smolowitz, and he's a filmmaker himself. He's been a dynamic, critical player in the movement of this project, and he's made suggestions to the rough cut, which you will see. So that is to bring my editor back, have her bring some of these, resolve some of these lingering issues with the rough cut, and then we go to getting to hire an attorney to work with us to get clearances for all of this archival material in the film. So those are some of the most immediate issues, and then we work with color correction, then we work with sound, and so.
And then you'll be entered into some documentary film festivals?
we'll submit applications for film festivals, documentary, and otherwise. It seems every town in America has a film festival. I was over in Mendocino last year, and lo and behold, they've got a film festival. And I was up in Maine, in Camden, Maine, they've got a film festival. So
In Sag Harbor, out on the east end of Long Island, Jackie Lofero started the Hamptons Documentary Film Festival, which has really grown over the years. And Dr. Ruth had a film that Patty Kenner was involved with about her life, and a Broadway show. And you never know, they may produce an opera based on Rhoda's life. Wouldn't that be something?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Yes.
mm-hmm.
Well, thank you very much, David, for joining us. And if we have viewers that want to get involved and volunteer, support, contribute, how can they go about reaching someone with this production?
They can go to our website, anuncommonwomanfilm.com.
I have to tell you, I absolutely adore the name An Uncommon Woman.
You know where it comes
Eleanor
from?
Roosevelt would love that, I have a feeling.
Do you know where it comes from? Why we're calling it that?
No.
It's we had an earlier title for the film, but one of Rhoda's dear friends is composer Joan Tower, who still is teaching up at Bard, and she wrote several pieces, each of which is which is a riff on Aaron Copland's Fanfare for the Common Man. Her pieces are Fanfare for the Uncommon Woman, and she's filmed in. I have her talking with Rhoda in the film, and she was just great and and she's honored that we're calling this film after her. So.
Oh, that's terrific. That's wonderful. Well, I can't wait to see it. I encourage all my viewers to tune in and see it when it's completed. And again, David, I want to thank you for joining us on Rise Up with Rebecca Seawright on the Manhattan Neighborhood Network. Last night, we held a wonderful forum on anti-Semitism at the Lenox Hill Neighborhood House. It was completely oversubscribed at capacity. And we sponsor a housing clinic, a free pro bono housing clinic at 1485 York Avenue. And so if we can be of service, please reach out to us at 212-288-4607. Thank you to our wonderful guests today, and thanks to all of you for tuning in.